So here we are, day one, and as you can see, we're leaving in rain. That's the norm, but let's head north to West Virginia.
You know, it is almost comical. Every time I leave home to go on a multi-day trip, it does seem like it's raining. We thought we had a window of weather where we could get farther north and miss most of this rain, but unfortunately, it rained on us most of the way up there. But this is a trip up to the new River Gorge in West Virginia. We predominantly took the back roads, the side roads, the thin roads, and we made our way through Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia. We stopped there and ate lunch, and then made our way up to Marion, Virginia, and went across the back of the Dragon into Tazewell, Virginia, and then stayed on 20 most of the way up through there to Pipestem State Park. And we spent our first night there at Pipestem State Park. Pipestem State Park was stunning. First time I'd ever been there, first time I'd been through that area. It was probably one of the nicest state parks I've ever been to. I really like Bahia Honda State Park in the Florida Keys, but this one, it ranks right up there as one of the very best state parks I've ever been to. And it had a lot of activities, and it had a lot of different areas set aside for horseback riding, archery, hiking, biking. Had an aerial tram, had 2 restaurants. It had a lodge, if you will, one down on the Bluestone River, one up there at the top where you could rent just like a dated hotel room. But everybody that I talked to told me that it was nice. So the state park was stunning. We've seen an abundance of wildlife. Later on, you'll see some pictures from an observation tower. We went up there and took a few pictures, but later that afternoon, the sun peeked out, and this place was stunning. The dining hall that we ate at the Bluestone Dining Hall at the state park, it was pretty good food. Really enjoyed it. We sat by the window, and you're looking off into, if you will, a valley or part of the New River Gorge Canyon, if you will, if I can describe it that way. But it reminded me of sitting up at the Mount Mitchell restaurant and looking off into the valley. Not quite as hilly, not quite as mountainous, but stunning just the same. And we sat there and watched the sunset, and it was very nice. As I looked over my notes from my journal that I kept of the trip, in the campground, there wasn't that many campers there. There was several RVs, but as far as tent campers, there wasn't as many. But there was we met a guy that was camping next to us in the site next to us, and I think he said his name was Scott, and we went over and shared the fire with him that evening. It was kind of, if you will, I won't say it was sad, but he told us late that evening as we were getting ready to go that was his birthday. But it was kind of neat that we shared the fire with him that evening, and to be there for his birthday. But I think he said he was from somewhere south of there, Mingo County, can't remember, but he was a good guy. Enjoyed talking to him, learning a little bit about the local area. He talked a lot about the fishing down in the Bluestone River, and as we took the aerial tram down, it actually crossed the Bluestone River there, and we had made a comment to one another, the wife and I, that we most definitely have to go back to the Pipestem State Park and stay at that lodge that's down on the Bluestone River. Kind of neat. You have to park your car at the top and ride the aerial tram down. Take your luggage with you. So even if it takes a couple of trips, or a couple of cars, take all your luggage with you, and you spend a long weekend down there at that lodge. They have a restaurant there as well. But here we are pulling into our camp spot at Pipestem State Park. This is where we reside for the first night. Might even get a glimpse of Scott to the left there, but this is where we stayed for the first night. Woke up in the morning, still kind of rainy. There it is. Oh yeah! Riding the aerial tram at Pipestem State Park. I recommend it. No chicken on a bridge, but close. On this trip, we took a slightly larger tent. It was a 3-man dome tent. We put an REI tarp up over the top. That way it'd keep the tent relatively dry so we could pack it up early in the morning. And we had a queen-size inflatable air mattress so we could sleep well. Other than the boss lady waking me up a couple of times to tell me that there was this big giant bear outside of our tent, I slept real well. I think we both slept well. Another thing that we found at Pipestem that I just remembered is we had Wi-Fi all over the park, not just at the restaurant and the hotels, but throughout the park we had Wi-Fi. It was oddly strange. But we got packed up and we probably left about 11 o'clock because you could see it was still kind of drizzly in spots and the roads were wet. But we were making our way to the Babcock State Park. North of there, not too terribly far, but we stopped and looked around and checked out some of the small towns along the way, and mainly staying on the thin line roads as much as possible, just to see what's going on in the areas. Mid-afternoon, we made our way to the Sandstone Visitor Center and the National Scenic River. It's a beautiful place. We did skip the Sandstone Falls because on Route 20, not only was there a lot of patches in the road and it had been raining a little bit, but somewhere, somehow, some truck or piece of equipment had been spilling oil or transmission fluid on the road. And twice this day we drifted around a couple of the turns, and it was kind of an uneasy feeling for me with the boss lady on the back. And so it really slowed us down. I was taking my time and trying to be a little more careful, but the visitor center was a wealth of information. How did I not know that the new river started in Blowing Rock, North Carolina? But it was kind of neat. They had a map on the floor of the visitor center where you could actually measure your feet and then walk the distance on the floor. But I got stamps for my passport books. It's one of the things we do is collect stamps when we go to these national park areas. But we made our way up part of Route 20, and we were going to later that afternoon make our way to the New River Canyon Rim Visitor Center, and that was stunning. It was astonishing. I don't understand how they got that bridge made, but anyway, we ate lunch at the Biscuit World, and it was surprisingly good. But that bridge, it still amazes me. So early in the afternoon, we made our way to the Babcock State Park. State Park was a little bit different than Pipestem. Back in the day, it was a CCC camp, Civilian Conservation Corps camp, and it had several of the original buildings there. And so it was a little bit different, but it was just as nice. So 2 state parks and 2 awesome experiences. But we got there, we set up our tent, unloaded the bike, took all the extra stuff that we didn't need, and we took a break, and then we got back on the bikes and made our way around and looked at the things available there in that area. The Babcock State Park has an old grist mill in it. As we did our research prior to the trip, we found out that one of the cabins they have there is allegedly haunted. Kay knew a little bit more about the story than I did, but it was kind of entertaining to hear that story of a haunted cabin. But the state park, the campers that we met an older couple. I think he said he was a minister. I think his name was Larry, and his wife Peggy. I think they had a dog with them too, but they were camping there. And we had a long chat with them. They were discussing and in amazement of how much stuff we actually had on the bike. And I thought we weren't loaded that heavy, but they said we just kept pulling stuff off the bike, and they didn't know how we got it all on there. But we had an interesting conversation with them, and meeting those folks along the way is one of the things that makes the trip. There was another group of campers that we got to meet and had a long conversation with the next morning. They were riding motorcycles, and they'd come from Macon, Georgia. They did the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Skyline Drive, and were making their way south back through West Virginia, and going to do some more of the Blue Ridge Parkway and make their way back to Macon. The one son, he had some form of cancer, and I got to talk with him in depth. The other son, bless his heart, lives in Macon, Georgia, and he gets out of his tent with a Tennessee shirt on. Now, without even knowing this guy, I just looked at him and said, "They must make your life pretty hard during football season." And they all laughed. It was like we all knew one another from back in the day. And those are the things, those are the moments that draws me back out on the road, to have those conversations, those interactions with people that I meet along the way. Here we are, we're leaving the Fayetteville area, headed back across the new River Gorge Bridge, making our way to the Canyon Rim Visitor Center. Going to walk down the stairs to take a look at the bridge from a little bit lower area. The only regret of the whole trip was that the roadway that went down to the river was, going down is supposed to be a one-way bridge. But on this particular day, they were doing road construction on the road that leads us out, and they told us it was two-way traffic. And from the stairs, as we walked down to look at the bridge, we could see the roadway, and the road wasn't very wide, and still being pretty heavy on the bike, I decided that we would make that for another trip. We'd come back and go all the way down to the river and take some pictures looking up at the bridge. But it's really the only regret that I have of this trip, is that we didn't make it down to the canyon floor, if you will. But that bridge was stunning. Going across the bridge, as soon as we cleared the tree lines, the wind would buffet us around a little bit, push us from side to side. Kind of got Kay's attention the first time we went across there. But the Canyon Rim Visitor Center was another beautiful place, one of their other national park areas. According to the book, there was only 4 of those in the state of West Virginia, and we managed to get the stamps for 3 of the 4. Walking down the boardwalk, take some pictures of the new river bridge. Probably hear the traffic as they're going across the bridge. We rode the motorcycle a couple of times across the bridge, and after doing so, we decided that the bridge walk was not going to happen. It's kind of a breezy day. The wind kind of pushed the motorcycle around a little bit. Of course, somebody got excited and talked pretty loud in the Sena devices. Wonder who that could be.
I guess that would be me.
That would be correct. We're walking down here to get some pictures of the bridge. Camera probably ain't gonna do this justice. That's a long way down. So on the 3rd day, we packed up camp at the Babcock State Park, and we made our way through one of the little towns along the river. I don't even remember the name of this town. I was always amazed at how these towns were built up from the river. And as we're going through town on this one-way street, I was intrigued by the town and made a video of it as we went through there. But we're still heading north. I think the destination for that day is going to be Ripley, West Virginia. But first we stopped at the Hawks Nest State Park. They have another aerial tram there as well. The cars are painted a little bit differently, but another stunning state park there. And we walked down to another observation deck to take those pictures right there. And it was a well done, beautiful park. And as we left there, we jumped on Route 60. I think they call it the Talon. And that was a fun road, lots of curves, tight, twisty turns. It was a real fun road to ride, and really enjoyed it. Enjoyed learning a little bit of the history of those tunnels and everything. One of those pictures there, you see where the river is diverted through a tunnel, and we were told the water goes through the tunnel and goes to like a hydroelectric power plant somewhere on the other side of that ridge. And it was just interesting to me, and learning a little bit about the area and the state parks and how they use the power of the moving water to harness it and make electricity. But we stopped a couple of times on our way up to Ripley, West Virginia. We were going to make our way to that area to visit with some family members. And it was enjoyable to be out in the sunshine and warm air. So that day was a fun day to be on the bike. As we continued north on Route 60, there was another set of waterfalls that we had found while we were doing our research for the trip. The name of the falls were Cathedral Falls, and I'd seen some pictures on the internet. I thought, yeah, we got to stop there. It's right there on the side of the road. You can see it from the road. So I thought, well, most definitely going to stop there. So it was on the list of things that I wanted to see, and it was kind of disappointing. It was missing one key thing that would make a waterfall spectacular. Yeah, it was missing the water. After having ridden a motorcycle for a couple of days in drizzling rain, this place here had not been getting much rain. We also there's the waterfall without the water, but we met a pilot there, him and his wife. They were visiting from the Atlanta, Georgia area, and talked with him briefly a little bit. And I think he's a pilot with the Delta Airlines, and he was sharing with me that he was also an Air Force pilot. I think he said that he flew the B-52. So it was an interesting conversation with them. They were just out doing like we were and exploring the area and looking at all the sights. But as we got up towards Huntington, we jumped on the super slab for a little while and started making our way north. But you can see the city over to the left, and I think there's actually a football stadium. As we're going to go right past it, you can see the stands from the side of the road there. But we didn't do too much interstate riding the whole time we were on this trip, but that we did do a short section of it, making our way towards Ripley. As we continued on towards Ripley, we decided we were going to stay at Holiday Inn Express there in Ripley, and we were going to stay for 2 nights and visit with some family members in that area, and then make our way over to Point Pleasant, and then cross the Ohio River and go into Gallipolis. And we spent a couple of days in that area exploring around. We stumbled into a covered bridge there. We just happened to see it, seen a sign or something, and we made our way over there and found it. But then we went and visited with some family members. He took us out to his farm. That's him in front of us. Took us out to his farm to show us the area. Got on the side-by-side and rode around the farm and looked at some of the hunting areas around there. And there was some beautiful places back there. The road went from very bad pavement to very loose gravel to very good pavement. But it was an interesting ride getting back into this area where the farm was. But it was good to visit with the family members that I hadn't seen in some time.
Take my truck over there and get the side by side and come back up and get you guys.
All right.
So how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
You got your Harley Davidson. Well, I didn't think you went that route. I thought last time when I seen you was one of those kind.
Once we left the farm, we made our way back to Ripley. We stopped in the downtown area at a pizza place and sat outside and kind of watched the goings on of the little town of Ripley, West Virginia. We could sit there, and right across the street from us was some memorials for different battles and stuff. But the next morning we got up and we made our way to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to visit with some other family members. And we spent several hours in Point Pleasant, down in their River Bridge area. I can't remember the exact name of it, but the River Park maybe. But it was right there on the Ohio River where the Kanawha River goes or comes into it. And just sitting there watching the barges go by and looking at some of the historical boats that have been turned into pleasure boats, and just seeing the goings on as they were preparing for their Labor Day festival. But along these walls, they had murals painted depicting the history of that era during the Revolutionary War era, maybe even a little bit farther back than that, but they were beautiful. The artist that did those has done an incredible job painting them. On the streets there was the only Mothman museum and the statue there. Back in the 80s sometime, I think there was a movie called The Mothman, and that folklore, if you will, comes from that area. Sometime early that afternoon, we crossed the bridges and made our way into Ohio, grabbing another state sign, if you will. We were going over to visit an aunt that lives over in Gallipolis, and the bridges were here we are talking about bridges again, but crossing the Ohio River, going into Ohio, visiting with another family member that lives there that I had not seen in a very long time. It was enjoyable to spend a couple hours sitting there talking and catching up and listen to her talk about my uncle and that area around there. And it was a very enjoyable afternoon. And after we left her house, we made our way back to Point Pleasant to visit with the other family members that live in Point Pleasant, as they had to work that afternoon. But in Gallipolis, we went down onto the river, and there was a city park there, and we walked around, and they were also setting up for their Labor Day festivities. And but the flowers were beautiful. It was well maintained. Historic town there as well. But we spent the afternoon in Gallipolis, and then we made our way back to Point Pleasant. So after visiting with our family members there in Point Pleasant, we stayed that last night in Ripley, West Virginia. As a side note, if you're going to stay in that area and you're on a motorcycle, you probably need to get where you're going before it gets dusky dark, because there's a lot of critters there. But we stayed at the Holiday Inn Express, got up the next morning, and the boss lady said it was time to start heading home. And so we got on the West Virginia Turnpike and headed south. And it was a fun day. It was a warm day, sunshiny day. So even though we did the super slab home, it was a good day to be on the bike. These tunnels were kind of fun to go drive through. We'd been through a couple of them crossing into the Cumberland Gap area on a previous trip, but this was some fun tunnels. It was very brilliant coming out of the tunnel, however. But I think our route included 77, the West Virginia Turnpike, to 81, and then we got on Interstate 26 and headed towards our North Carolina home. So all in all, it was a great trip. We did a whole lot in a few days, but we never felt rushed to see the next site, or we were always off the bike before it got dark. So I really enjoyed this trip, and I'm looking forward to start planning the next one. So if you're ever out there, take the time to stop and have those conversations with the people out there traveling, and get to meet people from various parts of the states, and ride those thin line roads.